the one who holds us in his hand is also the one who holds death in his hand, then there is absolutely nothing that a Christian should ever fear about death. Because the one to whom we belong also governs our life and our death and every single moment of it. Let's look at the first reason that Paul gives them to take heart, not be afraid. Reason number one. Paul says, take heart, the God to whom we, he says, but it means you too. The God to whom we belong governs first the time of our death. Here's what you're going to learn. Look, I don't care what American culture has taught us. There is no such thing as an untimely death. Do you all hear me? You hear it on the news, and so died and it was an untimely death. No, it wasn't. It was right on time. There is no such thing. Look back at verses 20 through 22, and I'm going to show you some things here. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope of our being saved was at last abandoned. Since they had been without food for a long time, Paul stood up among them and said, men, you should have listened to me and not have set sail from Crete and incurred this injury and loss. Yet now, I urge you, say those two words, take heart. It means be courageous, don't be afraid. Here's why you should not be afraid, for there will be no loss of life among you. I've read a lot of authors over the years who talked about death, especially when they're sitting next to people who are at their deathbed. One such author was a man named D.A. Carson. Here's what he wrote about this. He said, in light of the fact that we all must die, the exact timing surely is of relatively little consequence. The reason why he's right is because nothing happens apart from God's appointment. Remember what Solomon said about this? If you don't remember what Solomon said, I bet you remember the 60s song. Look at what he said. There is a, what church? What time? That means there's an appointment. There's an appointed time for everything. And there is a time for just a few events, right? No. Every event under heaven. Every event. The big ones, the small ones. Your birth was not an accident. Those of you who may think, my parents didn't want me. God did. You are not an accident. You have purpose, you have meaning, and you are valuable to God's Son. Every event. The cancer diagnosis is not an accident. You have to trust the one who has it all in his hands. That's what Paul believed, that it allowed him to comfort these men and say, don't give up. If you believe there's accidents, when someone says, take heart, you say, why? It's hopeless. But if you believe that there is a God who has it under control, you can say, I can take heart because the one who holds the keys to death, I belong to him. That's the point. The second reason Paul had no fear of death, listen to me, is because he belonged to the God who governed, listen to me, he governed the very hand of the one who was going to cut his head off in a few months. God could stop that hand of the one who was going to cut his head off. He knew every single cause of death. So, second reason, take heart. The God to whom we belong governs the cause of our death. Here's what you're going to learn. Not only is there no such thing as an untimely death, there's no such thing as an accidental death. Now, you may be thinking back through the catalog of your head and say, that sure seemed like an accident. Not to God. There is no such thing as an accidental death. He has never once stood up there and gone, I did not see that coming. If that's what you think of God, I'm sorry. That's not God. No such thing as an accidental death. Look at verses 23 through 24. For this very night, there stood before me, this is Paul speaking, an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I worship. And he said to me, do not be afraid. It's just another way of saying take heart. Same thing. Paul, you must stand before Caesar. Now hang on just a second. In case you don't know history, Caesar was the appointed cause of Paul's death. So when the angel says, don't be afraid, you must stand before Caesar, Paul just does the math. Well, if I have to stand before Caesar and Caesar is in Italy, I'm going to get to Caesar. I'm going to be okay. That's what he's saying to him. There was a mathematician who I want to introduce you to. He was a professor of mathematics at Cambridge in the late 1700s. Now listen to this. If you were the professor of math at a place like Cambridge, you all know Cambridge, you've heard that name at least. That's a pretty cushy job, wouldn't you say? Doug likes math. If you were a math lover and you got to work at Cambridge, it's going to take a lot for you to leave that job, wouldn't it? This particular man, he left to become a missionary to India. That's not a very cushy job. Look at what he wrote. If God has work for me to do, I can't die. He wasn't the only one to say this. Lots of people said this. Look what George Whitefield said. We're immortal until our work on earth is done. Here's what that means. It means those two guys have understood what Paul understood. And he understood what the angel was telling Paul. What the angel was trying to get Paul to understand, which he did immediately, is, look, there is an appointed time for you to die, and this isn't that appointment. And so until that appointed time comes, you cannot slip through the cracks accidentally. Until God's day comes for Luke Fraser to die, I will not die. The third reason Paul gives for why he had no fear of death is because he belonged to the God who had the exact details ironed out. Reason number 3, take heart. The God to whom we belong governs the circumstances of our death. So there's no such thing as an untimely death. There's no such thing as an accidental death. And here's the third one. There's no such thing as an ambiguous death, where God says, well, I kind of have a rough outline of how it's going to go for Luke and Ashley, and I know when they're going to go, but I haven't quite got the details figured out yet. Oh, well, I'll figure it out as I go along. Somebody laugh at that. That is laughable. That's not the God who Jesus came to reveal. Jesus knew exactly what he was coming to do, and he knew exactly how it was going to go. Same thing for every single person that has ever lived. No such thing as an ambiguous death. Look at verse 25 and 26. Take heart, men. I have faith in God that it will be, say the word, please. Let's do it again. Take heart, men. I have faith in God that it will be what, church? Exactly. Does that look like there's any room for an unsure God in there? It will be exactly as I have been told, but we have to shipwreck. It's going to be painful. It's not going to feel good. We're probably going to keep throwing up because this storm is bad. It doesn't matter. God told me exactly how it's going to go, and I believe exactly every word. Crossing of a T, dotting of an I. My God knows it all. How you interpret this will determine how you interpret the rest of your Bible and the rest of your life. Now listen to me. Some of you who will say, I don't like where Pastor Luke is going with this. I don't like how sovereign he's making God. Well, if you don't like that, you're going to interpret your Bible in such a way that you will come out of it with a God who does not know what he's doing. And you're going to have to read certain things about God that are not there. So I'm trying to protect you from that. And I'm trying to give you the kind of courage that a man like Paul had. You will never conquer fear. You won't. You'll stay imprisoned to fear for the rest of your life unless you have the same God Paul had, which is a God who has every detail exactly planned and nothing can change it. That's the God Paul knew. Is that the God that you know? Hey friends, Pastor Luke just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you for watching the video. If you found it to be edifying and encouraging, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. For more videos and sermons like this, or to watch the full-length sermon, you can find it right here on our YouTube channel or by visiting our website, www.hopeoflbi.com.